retired Vice Admiral Bob Harward, who spent part of his childhood in Iran, later serving for decades as a Navy SEAL and then as Deputy Commander of the U.S. Central Command. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Brett, you like the term, there's signal and there's noise when things like this happen. Sort it out. Where are we?
Look, any ceasefire early on, John, is a little shaky, but I've really never seen a ceasefire start like this. We really didn't have a ceasefire. We had some of the largest waves of attacks, missiles and drones across the Gulf, UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia. And then you had the Straits of Hormuz, which is supposed to be open, closed. No oil tankers got through the Strait of Hormuz today, and Iran has made very clear, we still control it. We will meter what ships go through, and you have to pay a toll to the Revolutionary Guard's Navy. So basically, nothing has changed in that most critical artery. And then you had Israel launch this massive wave of strikes in Lebanon, and then the confusion of what exactly is in the ceasefire that we just heard from the Vice President. So none of that is a good start. Let's hope over the next 24 hours things calm down, set the conditions for some of these talks. I make one final point. If these talks happen this weekend, big if I think still, and the Vice President sits down with Mohammad Ghalibaf, who is the Speaker of Iran's parliament, who's kind of a central figure in the Revolutionary Guards and in the system, that would be the most senior meeting, I think the most senior meeting between the United States and Iran ever. So that in itself is extraordinary. But even on that issue, John, the two sides are just so far apart, it's hard to see how we would come out of there with any sort of an agreement. So you could have a breakdown, and this war could very much start up again.
Let's come back to that part in just a second. That's the diplomat's perspective. From a military perspective, is what happened today a ceasefire? And when you hear all those White House voices saying we've achieved, and the Vice President, our military objectives are achieved. The Strait of Hormuz is not open. It is under Iranian control. There's no public commitment anyway for Iran to never try to enrich uranium again. Iran is still under, it's a different Ayatollah, but it's an Ayatollah. Has the United States achieved its military objectives?
Well, I would say this is definitely a strategic pause from both sides. Iran's been getting hammered for over 30-some days now, so they needed some time in their communications, their command and control, who's actually in charge and how he gets agreement in that organization is problematic. We still have forces closing the region, and as the president said, we're going to get oil flowing. So let's wait. Daybreak is now coming. The sun's coming up in Iran and the Gulf. Let's see what today, but both sides are going to leverage that time to enhance their positions. And again, the U.S. can resume operations anytime they want, including if Iran cannot let oil flow. So I think we're going to see today some big activity and indicators of where we are.
So day two almost more important than day one.
Exactly.
If there are misunderstandings, see if they can work them out and see where it goes. Let me get your view, each of you, quickly on this Israeli question. The Vice President says it was a misunderstanding. Both the Iranians and the Pakistani negotiators say Israel was supposed to stop. Israel clearly did not stop today. Is that another piece of, do you think Netanyahu saying, I'm going to take one day and then back off? What?
Well, both. You've seen two different strategies. We were focused on the Straits, the missiles. They were definitely focused on the IRGC and the regime, and an extension of that, Hezbollah. So I think they considered this outside of the realm of the ceasefire, and they needed to do what they need, clear southern Lebanon. So they took advantage of that. Again, today, if there's repeated activity, that becomes more problematic. So they took their shot. They leveraged that strategic pause to their advantage. Let's see what they're going to do today.
Iran's saying that if Israel goes after Hezbollah, we will shut the Strait of Hormuz. That's an equation in the region that has never been seen before. That's Iran saying we will continue to support our terrorist groups all around the region, and if Israel or anyone else goes after them, we have this tool to close the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, that is new. Bob and I, we've been doing this a long time. We've always talked about maybe they might close the Strait of Hormuz. They've now done it. So I believe this has to end either with a diplomatic resolution of the Strait of Hormuz. Let's hope we get there. Let's hope what the president said, that's where we go. Or I think we might have to go back to the military campaign. I hate to say it.
But the president said it was essentially a dual U.S.-Iranian toll gate.
I can't see that. This
How?
is the Revolutionary Guards. This is the Revolutionary Guards. I cannot, it's unfathomable to imagine. This is an international strait. Let's get back to first principles. International strait. Shipping has to be free, complete, immediate, and safe, exactly as the president said. That's the standard, and we should work to hold the Iranians to it.
I want to come back to you. This would be the highest level meeting with Iran in quite some time. You also said, after CNN's Kylie Atwood reported a couple weeks ago, that Iran would prefer to negotiate with Vance. You're of the opinion that it would be a bad idea to give them what they want. Now we are where we are. Is it good to have Vance there?
Well, if it's Ghalibaf, and if he's actually going to show up and meet, yeah, the Iranians are very protocol conscious, John. So, Foreign Minister Arachi would meet with our envoys or with, say, Rubio. Ghalibaf is seen as he's really a fixture of the system, and right now he's kind of the top guy. So they would probably say, let's meet with the vice president. It's an extraordinary meeting if that happens. Again, something like that, though, should be set up. You got to do the groundwork so when the two senior figures get in the room, you got something kind of pre-cooked. Right now, I mean, we're very far apart on everything.
I want to quickly ask you about Secretary Hegseth today, who said if the Iranians don't work on a deal to essentially voluntarily hand over the uranium, the United States will go in and get it. I assume when you were at CENTCOM, this was table-topped at least once, if not twice, that if the United States had to send in forces to get that uranium buried underground, now more buried underground because of bombing and bombing and bombing and bombing, what would that take?
Take a large force. But again, if we go back to shutting down the straits, the free flow, putting down their missiles, time's not an issue. And as demonstrated by the rescue of the pilot, we can go anywhere in Iran at any time we want and do anything we want.
But on the ground for months.
Well, you don't need to go on the ground for months. Maybe you go in and do a raid like they did, call forces come into, and you decimate them. You pull out and you do another raid. So there are all sorts of ways depending on your strategy, and the strategy and the objective is to recover that material. So there's a lot of different ways to do that, and time is on our side if they pose no threats from the missiles and flow of oil. So which way do you, both ends toward the middle, bottom up, top? So that's the strategy. We'll have to see the Secretary of War leverage and what he decides approach to do it.
See what happens in the second 24 hours, and we'll know what questions to ask next, I guess. Gentlemen, Brett McGurk, Admiral Harward, thank you so much for coming in for us tonight. A government-affiliated news